was a sweltering July night in the Appalachian Mountains. The air was thick and heavy, clinging to skin and lungs like a wet blanket. 5 friends, Mark, Sarah, Jason, Emily, and Kevin, had escaped the chaos of the city, seeking adventure deep in the woods. They wanted silence, stars, and the feeling of being far away from the world. Hours of hiking brought them to a clearing beside a dried-up riverbed. It was secluded, perfect for camping. Pine needles and damp earth carpeted the ground, and the faint smell of moss and something metallic lingered in the air. Kevin, always cautious, paused. "This place feels off," he said, "like we're being watched." Jason laughed nervously. "You're just imagining it. It's dark, everything looks weird." But even he glanced over his shoulder, uneasy. They pitched tents and built a fire. The flames cast dancing shadows across the clearing. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint, indecipherable sounds. By 10 p.m., the fire crackled, illuminating their faces. They told stories, roasted marshmallows, and tried to relax, but an unease lingered. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant snap of a branch made their hearts pound around midnight. The first sound came a soft whisper carried on the wind. Emily shivered. "Did you hear that?" "It's just the trees," Jason said, though his voice lacked conviction. The whispering grew louder. It was no wind, no animal. It was a voice, low, urgent, incomprehensible, pressing against their ears. Mark, curious and stubborn, grabbed a flashlight. "I'll check it out," he said. He disappeared into the darkness. Minutes passed. Then Emily screamed. Others ran toward her voice, finding Mark's shoes neatly placed on a rock. No footprints. No sign of him, nothing except the shoes. Panic set in. Jason shouted Mark's name. The forest swallowed it, twisting it into a mocking echo. The whispering returned, louder, surrounding them, crawling over their skin like icy fingers. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The tents shook. Scratching noises started, soft at first, then violent, like claws raking across fabric. Shadows moved between the trees, bending unnaturally. One shadow, tall and pale, reached toward Emily and vanished. Time lost meaning. Every noise, every rustle, every distant howl felt directed at them by 2 a.m. A thick fog rolled into the clearing, clinging to their legs and turning familiar shapes into grotesque forms. Footprints appeared not human, elongated, bare, leading into the forest. The friends debated running. Kevin argued they should stay, but Sarah insisted they move. Guttural, inhuman scream tore through the forest. Emily froze. Shadows, twisted, pale, grotesque, reaching for the fire. For them, hours dragged. The night seemed endless. Whispers turned into screams. Shadows became more defined, elongated human forms, faceless, dripping like mist. Limbs bending unnaturally. By 4 a.m., exhaustion overtook them. The fire was almost dead. The fog thickened, making it nearly impossible to see. The trees themselves seemed alive, bending slightly toward them. The metallic scent in the air was overwhelming. Emily whispered, "It's like the forest. Once. Us." They huddled, silent, shaking. Then the whispering stopped. Silence. Total silence. Only the faint crackle of embers. As dawn approached, they saw something horrifying. Their tents slashed open from inside, and shadows retreating into the trees, dissolving into the fog. They ran, tripping, stumbling through roots and undergrowth. Every sound, the snap of a branch, a distant scream, made them flinch. By the weak light of morning, they emerged from the forest. The clearing looked calm, normal, but Mark was gone. Weeks of searching yielded nothing. No footprints, no body, No trace of him, only the scorched patch of ground in the riverbed where he disappeared. Emily and Kevin never camped again. Jason moved out of state. Sarah warned strangers. The forest claims people who wander too far. Some nights, she whispered, if you wander deep into the Appalachian woods, you can hear the whispers. And if you ignore them, the forest will take you too. Because the forest isn't just alive, it's patient. It waits, and when it chooses, it takes. It was the kind of warm July night that feels almost too perfect. The air was thick and humid, carrying the faint scent of pine and lake water. Crickets hummed in the surrounding trees, and the still water of Lake Tahoe reflected the moon like a silver mirror. Lisa and Daniel had rented a secluded summer house on the lake, seeking a weekend escape from the city. They imagined long nights under the stars, swimming in the moonlit water, and mornings filled with coffee on the porch. During the day, the house seemed charming enough. White wooden siding, a small dock extending into the lake, and a wraparound porch that invited long summer mornings. But as night fell, the house began to feel wrong. Shadows stretched too long across the porch. The trees surrounding the house seemed closer than they should have been, and the reflection of the moon on the water flickered oddly, as if something moved beneath the surface. The first night passed without incident, or so they thought. The couple stayed up late, talking and laughing, sipping wine. When they finally went to bed, the gentle lap of water against the dock lulled them to sleep. Around midnight, Lisa awoke to a sound, soft, rhythmic, almost melodic lapping of water against the dock. At first, she assumed it was Daniel stirring, but the sound was different, louder, closer. She rose silently, peering out the window. The lake was perfectly still. Then, a ripple spread across the water, emanating from the center. Moving outward in deliberate circles, she blinked, panned. The ripples vanished. "Daniel, wake up," she whispered. He stirred, murmuring something, but remained asleep. Lisa watched for what felt like hours. Every so often, the water would ripple again, as though invisible hands were brushing against its surface. And sometimes she could swear she glimpsed shapes beneath the water, pale and distorted. By the second night, the unease had grown unbearable. The couple dined on the porch, but the air felt thick, suffocating. The trees swayed without wind, leaves whispering secrets just beyond understanding. Shadows moved at the edge of vision, always retreating when looked at directly. Then came the knocking, slow, deliberate, against the windows. Lisa's breath caught. No one was outside. Daniel reassured her it must be branches, but the knocking continued, rhythmic, almost as if someone or something was trying to communicate. Curiosity and fear mixed in equal measure. Daniel stepped outside onto the dock. Lisa followed, holding a flashlight. That's when they saw it, a figure in the water, pale, floating just below the surface, head barely breaking the moonlight. It didn't swim or move toward the shore. It waited, watching Dot. When Daniel called out, the figure disappeared. The next day brought no comfort. Sunlight revealed the house's charm once more, but the air still carried a subtle metallic taint, faintly like blood. Every step toward the dock felt heavier, almost magnetic, as though the lake itself was calling to them by the third night. The lake began to show its true nature. Lisa woke to a wet, cold touch brushing against her arm. She froze, realizing Daniel was still asleep. The air seemed thicker, almost liquid, pressing down, filling her lungs with a heavy, damp scent. The figure returned, floating closer this time, more defined. His face was pale, elongated, almost waxen, eyes unblinking, staring, and it smiled. The couple, panicked, tried to leave the property. The car wouldn't start. The engine stalled again and again, as if resisting their escape, and then the singing began, a soft, melancholy lullaby echoing across the lake, filling their minds with despair. They tried calling for help phones dead. No signal, no lights from other houses. They were alone. The figure rose slightly from the water, revealing more than it should. Pale hands reached out, just above the surface, moving as if tracing invisible lines in the moonlight. Hours dragged. The lullaby became louder, closer, echoing from all directions. Shadows formed along the shoreline, twisting, elongated, reaching. The air grew colder. Every movement of the couple was mirrored by strange distortions in the water, as if reality itself was bending. Dawn finally arrived, or something like it. The figure vanished with the first rays of sun. The lake returned to calm, smooth, normal, but the scratches remained on the front door. The metallic smell lingered. When Lisa and Daniel spoke to locals, they were met with silence or cryptic warnings. People had disappeared in the lake before. Some said the lake claimed those who lingered too long, who looked too closely at its reflections. Lisa and Daniel never returned. But some nights, neighbors say, when the summer is still and the moon hangs high, soft singing drifts over the lake, a warning, a whisper to those who dare linger too close. Never linger. The lake takes what it wants. It was a hot summer night in New Mexico, the kind that made the asphalt shimmer under the car's headlights. A group of college friends, Mia, Jordan, and Tyler, were on a road trip along Route 66. They had packed snacks, playlists, and dreams of endless adventure. Eager to escape the city and feel the freedom of the open road, by midnight, they were deep in the desert. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction, punctuated only by the occasional silhouette of an abandoned building or a lonely saguaro cactus. The hum of the engine was the only sound, until it sputtered. Sparks flew, the car jolted, and then everything went dark. "Great," Jordan muttered, slamming his fist on the dashboard. "Of course, in the middle of nowhere. Do you see any lights? Any town?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. There was nothing, only endless, black, empty road and the low, constant hum of silence. Then they saw him, a figure at the side of the road, standing perfectly still. Tall, thin, wearing clothes that seemed to decades-old, faded suit, slicked back hair, like he had stepped out of the 1950s. His face was unnaturally pale, the wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Need a ride?" He called softly, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. Alex hesitated. I don't think we should." Before he could finish, the man was already opening the passenger door and sliding in. The group froze. He said nothing else, hands folded, neatly in his lap, eyes staring straight ahead. Then, possibly, the engine roared back to life, headlights cutting through the darkness as if nothing had happened. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. "Where are you going?" Jordan asked. His voice shook. The man didn't answer. He didn't blink. His gaze remained fixed ahead on the empty road. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt wrong. The road stretched endlessly. The radio flickered on, static and distorted voices seeping through for a moment. Then, dead silence again. Mia rubbed her temples. "I feel dizzy. Something's not right." Tyler swerved slightly to avoid a shadow on the road. Nothing visible. The man's expression didn't change. His eyes, unblinking, unrelenting. Then, in the faint moonlight, something appeared on the horizon. A gas station, rusted, abandoned, with flickering neon, broken windows, and a single pump that looked decades old. The car slowed. The stranger pointed silently. Alex glanced at him, then realized the seat was empty. He had vanished. The car doors were locked. No windows, no sound, except the soft, eerie hum of the desert wind. And then the note appeared, lying neatly on the dashboard. Next time, don't stop. The friends panicked. They tried the engine, it wouldn't start. They tried to call for help. No signal. Phones dead. The desert stretched endlessly. Shadows at the edges of the headlights seemed to twist unnaturally. A low laughter echoed across the sand, bouncing off the distant mesas, as if the desert itself were alive and mocking them. Mia swore she saw figures just beyond the light silhouettes of people moving impossibly fast, distorted. Jordan's hands shook on the wheel. We need to get out. Now. Our soar was at minutes past in that cursed stretch of road. Each time they thought they were leaving the stranger behind, the same shadowy figure appeared in the distance. Always smiling, always motionless, always watching. Then hallucinations began. Alex swore he saw their own faces reflected in the side mirrors, pale and twisted, lips stretched into silent screams. Tyler felt fingers brush his arm, cold and wet, though no one was there. Mia saw the desert stretch like a canvas, the road bending unnaturally, impossible angles that made her stomach turn. The group argued, panic and paranoia eating them alive. They took turns driving, but the stranger wore something was always at the edges of their vision, always close enough to make them fear every shadow, every flicker of movement. Finally, dawn approached. They stumbled upon the same gas station, appearing again out of nowhere, broken, rusted, abandoned. They stopped, terrified. Alex opened the door empty. No one there. The note on the ground. Next time, don't stop. They ran across the cracked pavement, tripping over weeds and rocks. The desert laughing at them. The wind carried whispers. Next time, don't stop. Weeks later, they tried to find the stretch of road again. Maps didn't match their memory. Locals denied any gas station had existed there. The desert remained empty, silent, mocking them. But sometimes, at night, the summer heat lingers and the highway is empty. Drivers swear they see a figure in old-fashioned clothes, standing at the roadside, smiling too widely, offering a ride. Those who stop are never seen again. Alex, Mia, Jordan, and Tyler never spoke of it. The desert had marked them, okay? And the warning stayed, echoing through their dreams. Next time, don't stop. It was the kind of summer night that made the air feel thick, sticky, and heavy. For friends Lena, Max, Sophie, and Rian drove down a deserted back road in rural Ohio, looking for adventure. They had heard stories about an abandoned carnival on the outskirts of town. Lights once flickered there, music once echoed, but decades ago it had closed after a string of strange disappearances. Locals avoided it, whispering tales of screams in the night and shadows that never belonged. But curiosity and a hint of teenage bravado pulled them closer. When they arrived, the carnival was nothing like they had imagined. The gates were rusted, creaking softly in the warm night wind. Torn banners flapped gently over empty stalls. The Ferris wheel loomed in the distance, skeletal and motionless, its cabins swaying slightly as if stirred by invisible hands. This place is creepy, Sophie whispered, shivering. Exactly why it's perfect, Max replied, grinning. Imagine the stories we can tell. They parked the car and stepped onto the cracked asphalt. The smell hit them first stale popcorn, rust, and something metallic underneath, faint but undeniable. Lena wrinkled her nose. Something's not right, she said. They wandered past the booths, the sounds of the city fading behind them. Every step echoed unnaturally loud, like the carnival itself was listening. Shadows stretched in impossible directions. The night seemed alive. Then a faint melody began to drift through the air, tinny, distorted, like a music box playing a half-remembered tune. Sophie froze. "You hear that?" Max laughed nervously. "It's just the wind. It's probably a music box somewhere." But the melody grew louder, more insistent. The Ferris wheel creaked as if moving under a weight, though they could see no one inside. Ryan's flashlight flickered, casting elongated shadows that seemed to creep toward them. They entered the main pavilion, once the heart of the carnival. Dust covered the floor, cobwebs hung from the ceiling. "Okay." And then Lena saw Ida Clown Doll staring at them from a dark corner, its glassy eyes reflecting the flashlight. She stepped closer, and the doll was gone. "Did it move?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling. "No, probably your imagination," Max said, though his own voice wavered. Hours passed, or it felt like hours. Every corner they turned, the carnival seemed to change. Stalls shifted slightly. The paths they had walked appeared in different arrangements. Shadows twisted unnaturally, forming shapes that resembled faces, elongated limbs, laughing mouths that weren't real. Then came the laughter, soft at first, high-pitched, distant but growing steadily louder. It didn't sound like any child, adult, or animal they had ever heard. It echoed from the rides, from the shadows, from nowhere and everywhere at once. Suddenly, the carousel spun, slowly, creaking, its horses moving as if ridden by invisible riders. The music box melody grew distorted, faster, filled with static and screams. Ryan grabbed a piece of wood, trembling. "We need to leave now." But the carnival had other plans. The exits disappeared. The gates they had walked through were no longer there. Every stall they tried to approach shifted, blocking them. Shadows lunged from corners, faces pale, distorted, teeth bared-peaked from behind torn banners. Sophie screamed as a figure emerged from the darkness, a clown, possibly tall, its painted smile grotesque and wet-looking. It didn't move like a human, its limbs bent in unnatural angles, stretching and contracting as it advanced. They ran through narrow corridors of stalls, over broken rides, through fog that had suddenly rolled in, thick and clinging to their legs. The laughter followed, echoing endlessly, pressing against their ears, drowning rational thought. Hours or maybe minutes passed in a blur. They stumbled into the center of the carnival, now completely transformed. The Ferris wheel rotated, faster, music blasting, lights flickering, shadows writhing across every surface. Lena looked back. Max had vanished, flash of white teeth in a dark corner, and he was gone. The remaining three ran blindly. The carnival seemed alive, reshaping itself, twisting the familiar into the impossible. Finally, dawn approached. Fog lifted. The rides stopped. The laughter faded. The carnival returned to silence, but Max was gone. Weeks later, locals denied any carnival had ever existed there. Search parties found nothing. No tracks, no broken rides, no signs of the friend's bud. Whispers remained in the night air. People claimed that if you wandered too close to the abandoned area on summer nights, you could hear music boxes, distant laughter, and the echo of screams, warning you to stay away. Lena, Sophie, and Ryan never spoke of the carnival again. The world, it seemed, agreed it had never existed. But some nights, in the dead of summer, the melody returns, and those who listen too closely might never leave. The carnival waits, and it always takes. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when Ethan decided to take a solo hike deep into the forests of Northern California. He was an experienced hiker, confident in his skills, with maps, GPS, and a backpack full of supplies. The plan was simple: explore a remote trail, enjoy the quiet, and return before nightfall. At first, the hike was everything he had hoped for. Sunlight filtered through the tall pines, casting dancing shadows on the forest floor. Birds called to each other, and the wind whispered through the trees. He followed the trail markers carefully, feeling a comforting sense of solitude. But as the day wore on, the trail became less distinct. Roots and rocks tangled beneath his boots. The sounds of wildlife faded. The sun dipped lower, and the forest seemed to grow heavier, darker, almost suffocating. Ethan paused. He checked his GPS. Sid had stopped working. No signal. He laughed, nervously, telling himself it was normal in deep forests. But an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach. Hours passed. Trail markers became sparse, indistinct. Every direction looked the same. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the rustling of leaves sounded almost like whispers. Voices just beyond comprehension. By late afternoon, Ethan realized he was lost. Panic flickered, but he forced himself to stay calm. He followed what he thought was the trail, but it twisted back on itself, leading him in circles. The forest felt alive, moving around him, watching as dusk approached. The temperature dropped unexpectedly. Mist began to rise from the forest floor, curling around the trees in masking shapes. Ethan heard snapping branches behind him. He turned, flashlight in hand, but saw nothing. And then he heard it, a low, guttural whispering. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the whispering grew clearer, more deliberate, like someone or something was calling his name. Ethan. He spun, shining his flashlight into the fog. Shadows shifted just beyond the beam. One seemed taller, elongated, bending in ways that were impossible. Every instinct screamed at him to run. But where? The forest was endless, hours dragged. Darkness fell completely, and the mist thickened. He stumbled over roots, mud, and rocks. Every sound, the crunch of leaves, the distant rustle of branches made him jump. The whispers returned, closer, circling him now, echoing through the dense forest. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, matching his own pace, but always just behind. Ethan ran, sprinting blindly, his flashlight beam slicing through the fog. The footsteps accelerated, keeping pace. A figure appeared briefly between the trespail, tall, faceless, limbs bending unnaturally. It vanished the moment he blinked. Panic set in completely. Ethan screamed into the empty forest, but the sound seemed swallowed instantly, turning to him as faint echoes. Hours or perhaps minutes passed. The forest twisted around him. The familiar paths disappeared, replaced by impossible angles, distorted trunks, and gnawed roots that seemed to reach for him. His water bottle spilled, his backpack snagged, and the whispers grew into a chorus of unintelligible voices. Pressing against his mind, Ethan found himself at a small clearing, its moonlight illuminating something unnatural. Footprints, not human, elongated, clawed, leading deeper into the forest. Something compelled him to follow, a terrible curiosity he couldn't resist. The mist thickened, and the figure returned, now closer. Pale, featureless, its eyes were where eyes should have been glowing faintly. It didn't move like a human. Limbs twisted, stretching in impossible ways, and it smiled. Ethan turned to run, but the forest had changed completely. The path back was gone, replaced by trees that bent toward him, shadows that shifted in impossible angles. The whispers became deafening, words finally clear. You should not have come. He stumbled, fell, scrambled through the underbrush. The figure glided silently behind him, ever present, always just beyond reach. By dawn, Ethan collapsed near a creek. The figure was gone. The forest was silent again, still, empty, but something had changed. His backpack was ripped open, supplies missing, and when he checked the trail, it led him not back to the parking lot, to a place he did not recognize. Deeper in the forest, Ethan eventually found his way out, but he was never the same. Weeks later, Hiker spoke of seeing a pale figure gliding through the forest at night, a faint whisper calling your name if you stray too far. Ethan never returned to the forest, but the memory of that night never left him, and he knew if he had stayed one moment longer, the forest would have claimed him, just as it had countless others before. The forest waits, patient, silent, and hungry.